Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hivemind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, once again, the exact same thing, right? The leftist news media never actually does real reporting on the important facts unless they absolutely feel as though they have to, until it reaches peak desperation mode, where their back's against the wall and they feel like they have to tell the truth in order to wake up their viewers and hopefully mobilize voters. Unless it's completely necessary, they don't tell the truth. Or rather, they omit key data, key facts from their reporting, and just keep essentially living in fairy tale land, in la la land. And well, of course, knowing that, it becomes very easy to predict when they're panicking, when the desperation hits peak levels. And boy oh boy, is that exactly what's happening. The left has been working so hard to avoid this topic. The current reality of early voting data, Republicans are getting seriously ahead, or at least significantly ahead of where you'd expect them to be in early and mail-in ballots. And of course, what does that mean? It means the Democrats are falling behind their targets. You know, they even tried to spin the story. I've been seeing so many ridiculous leftoids, and even mainstream talking heads on X suggesting that Democrats are doing swimmingly. Wow, look how ahead they are in early voting. They've tried to avoid this topic, and of course they've tried to spin this topic, but at this point, the trend has become so significant, so widespread across all the important battleground states, that the leftist mainstream media no longer is choosing to ignore or spin it. They're now sounding the alarm in the only way they know how, by finally telling the frickin' truth and reporting on important facts. Oh boy, the desperation continues to kick in. Let's have a conversation about it, but this video is actually brought to you guys by a sponsor, so let's play that clip. This video is brought to you guys by American Hartford Gold. Listen folks, in terms of a long-term financial view, the worst thing that you could do is hold on to cash. Everything is getting more expensive. If you hold on to cash, you simply become poorer, and that's where American Hartford Gold comes into play. American Hartford Gold is a 5-star rated company across the board, and also boasting an A+ rating at the Better Business Bureau. These guys are simply the best, and they're here to protect you in these inflationary times by diverting a portion of your portfolio into solid precious metals, gold and silver. And friends, American Hartford Gold makes it as easy as it gets. All you gotta do is give them a call, and they'll have physical gold and silver sent to your doorstep or directly deposited into your IRA or 401k. It's a no-brainer, folks. Hold on to the world's oldest and most stable investment. That's precious metals. Protect yourself from inflation, and all it takes is a single phone call. And you probably thought I was done there, but nope, it gets even better because they're currently running a special promotion where you can receive up to $15,000 in free silver on qualifying purchases. Friends, like I said, it's a no-brainer. Protect yourself against the incompetence of these useless, empty-suit politicians by simply giving a call to 844-440-1005, that's 844-440-1005, or text Hivemind, that's one word, Hivemind, to 65532. Again, that's text Hivemind to 65532. A huge thank you to American Hartford Gold. Now back to the video. Okay folks, so basically everything I said in the intro, finally, as per usual, the leftist media is a little bit behind the curve, but now they're stuck having to admit the truth.
But based on the likely partisanship of the voters that we've seen so far, we're seeing more Republicans as a share of the electorate than Democrats. Take a look at that. 4 years ago, less than a third, only 32% of people that had voted so far were Republicans. That's up 6 points so far this cycle. Now, that could be a sign of enthusiasm among Republicans. It could be because Donald Trump is sometimes at least supporting early voting. And it may be that these are voters they're going to vote anyway on Election Day. But the bottom line is that people are voting and they're enthusiastic about this race. In Pennsylvania, we've seen Republicans so far ahead of the 2020 pace. Again, Democrats are still a larger share of early voters, but there are more Republicans in just about all of the states where we've seen significant votes so far.
And boom, there it is. There's been so much talk about Kamala Harris having such incredible enthusiasm behind her. I've even seen some polls, it's hard to call them polls when they're coming out of NBC News, but I've seen some polls suggesting that Democrat enthusiasm is actually higher than Republican. Oh, Kamala, she's so popular, she's got everybody so excited to vote for her. All the celebrities, all the social media stars. Clearly it's working. You know, that's been the narrative, or at least that's the narrative that they tried to spin, but as per usual, all they did was spin a web of lies, which isn't exactly a substitute for reality now, is it? That's not happening. Clearly it's not happening. There's no big groundswell of Democrat voter enthusiasm. I mean, for Pete's sakes. MSNBC over the last 2 weeks or so has been on a quest to find Kamala voters, and I think they've found one. Even the most partisan of left-wing networks can't find a single Kamala voter, but supposedly they're everywhere. It's been this weird phenomenon where Kamala Harris supposedly has such incredible grassroots support, yet when she showed up at the Primanti Bros in Pennsylvania, she had to bring in her own restaurant patrons, kicking out the Trump supporters essentially, and bringing in a bunch of Democrat shills. You know, obviously there's been this big gap between perception, what we're actually seeing, and what the left-wing media has been promoting. There's no enthusiasm there. Meanwhile, on the other side, I mean, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. Those 75 million voters, they're coming back from the previous election, and probably even more. The base continues to expand, and there are so many people who are so excited to vote for the former president. Meanwhile, on the other side, generally what you hear is not, I can't wait to vote for Kamala and all of her great plans. It's more so, I want to vote for literally anything that's not Donald Trump. I'd vote for a paper bag if I had to, as long as it wasn't the evil orange man. You know, it's not exactly a singing endorsement of Kamala Harris. There's no enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. The only enthusiasm they have, and even Kamala knows this, is the fear-mongering element. That's the only motivating factor. Vote against Donald Trump. Don't vote for me, vote against Donald Trump. I think that was plainly evident during her interview at Fox News with Bret Baier.
Democrats voted. Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, 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 and Donald Trump, Donald Trump.
President Biden had a fundraiser debate stage.
Let's go back to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris spent the entire 25-minute interview just trying to fearmonger about Trump. Trump's so scary. Oh, Trump's so scary. And now she's doing this shtick. Just yelling into the microphone. Again, seemed as though this strategy really kicked in during that disastrous Bret Baier interview on Fox News.
But talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
They know that nobody's there to see Kamala Harris. She's not the main act. Democrats are only motivated by their hatred of Donald Trump, by their Trump derangement syndrome. Democrats know this. Kamala Harris knows this. And so, really, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that there isn't the same level of enthusiasm. There just isn't. Because, of course, this Trump derangement syndrome spell isn't permanent. It's not rooted in reality. It's not going to last forever. This whole Donald Trump is literally Hitler shtick can only work so long until people start to realize Donald Trump's not Hitler. He's just a goofy businessman who happened to be very successful and happens to be very charismatic and a little bit rambunctious. It's not the same thing. He's a New Yorker. He's just an eccentric New York billionaire. That's what he is. He's not Hitler, for Pete's sakes. And so, like I keep saying, you know, the diminishing returns are in effect. The more you do something, the more you cry wolf, the less of an actual impact it has. More people start waking up, and a lot of people just aren't buying it anymore. They're not motivating people with that rhetoric, with that strategy, but Donald Trump continues to motivate people because people find he's genuine, funny, a good leader, strong, resilient. I mean, for Pete's sakes, he got shot in the ear and stood right back up, then went back to the scene of the crime and said, and as I was saying, I mean, he's the biggest badass. He's the American badass. He's become an icon. And people love him, and that love isn't going anywhere, and the enthusiasm might be stronger than it's ever been. And one thing's for sure that we know, even CNN reported on this, Trump is more popular than ever, and clearly that's what's happening here. You know, the Democrats have tried to spin this whole early voting thing as being bad for Republicans, but clearly it isn't. Even ABC News, you know, the network who a couple weeks ago said, well, only a couple apartment complexes have been taken over by Tren de Aragua, or whatever the frick that gang's name is from Venezuela, only a couple apartment buildings, what's the big deal? You know, that partisan bias hack network, even they're admitting it, that actually Republicans are overperforming in early ballot data compared to the last two elections, compared to 2020 and 22 respectively. And that's got to be the story. That has to be the number one focus right now. I mean, what's going on with this early data could frankly spell the end of Kamala Harris's campaign. Folks, Joe Biden only took the last election with 40,000 votes. And well, now Republicans are trending ahead of where they did in the last election cycle by hundreds of thousands of votes. What does that tell you? Well, that tells you that Republicans are way ahead here. They're way ahead of their target. What's been described as the Democrat early ballot firewall is more of an LED strip these days. Just walk right over it. No real flames in sight. And you know, in a lot of these states that are supposedly so close and Kamala Harris has made such significant gains since Joe Biden dropped out of the race, well, again, that just might not be happening. We've got another tweet from Eric Doherty, who's the guy that I've been following for all of this data, where he writes, breaking, Nevada Republicans surged to the polls on day one of early voting in a total blowout. Look at these results. Republicans supposedly leading by 25 points almost in early voting data. That is completely insane. And apparently, according to him, which I believe most of this data is actually from TargetSmart, which is an affiliate of NBC, by the way, so they're not getting this data from a partisan source or from an unreputable source, but apparently in North Carolina, Republicans lead in early voting. And supposedly we're seeing the same thing in Arizona. Michael Prusser, another data analyst that we've been following on all of these topics, released this recently. Arizona expected turnout for the 2024 general election, where he's predicting roughly 300,000 more Republicans showing up to vote than Democrats. He's calculated an R plus 8.33 electorate, and this is based on the state's current results over the last 4 years, as Republicans have supposedly gained a voter registration edge of 300,000 active voters, compared to their 130,000 edge back in the 2020 general election. So basically, it's like we've been saying, it's basically the story that the mainstream media has chosen to ignore. Voter registration, we've been following this forever. Republicans have been simply registering more voters in all of the swing states. Democrats have, in some cases, lost voters, and Republicans have made gains by the hundreds of thousands. It's not just Florida. And so that's why we've been sitting here scratching our heads, asking ourselves the question, you know, if we're seeing that in the voter registration data, how can Kamala Harris possibly stand a chance? It just doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense. And well, now I guess it all makes sense. It makes sense why the media was ignoring this story, why they were ignoring voter registration data and simply pushing the push polls, because apparently it's translating. All those new registered voters supposedly are showing up, and they're showing up early to vote, and to vote for Donald Trump. And I don't want to hear anything about, oh, Republicans for Harris. They're actually Republicans for Harris. They're registering as Republicans so they can vote for Kamala Harris. Not happening. It's not freaking happening. It's another made-up, bogus fairy tale being promoted by the mainstream media. We've debunked it in the past using left-wing push polls. There's actually more Democrats voting for Trump than there are Republicans voting for Harris. And according to our analysis, same thing with independents. More independents for Trump than there are independents for Harris. How does Kamala Harris win in that situation? I don't know, but it seems as though Kamala Harris is lagging behind big time, and it just isn't surprising. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.